Hello everyone, and I'd like to welcome you this afternoon to our webinar where we're going to be looking at future trends and accessing markets. And as we know, a lot has changed in the last year, but we have some exciting insights from Marcus Williams, who is going to look at it from the American market side of things, and Florence will be looking at Europe, the UK, and closer to home. And I am going to put my email in the chat, and we're looking at the product analysis piece. We have a very large group of you today, and what I'm going to do is follow up and match you with experts in your particular area to carry on the product analysis piece over the coming days, weeks, etc. So we'll have both of the presentations, and then please put questions into the chat or the Q&A, and we'll deal with them then at the end. So with that, I think we'll start. And Marcus, I'd like to welcome you.
Great, thanks a million, Emer. Delighted to be here. As Emer said there, I am going to speak about the US market, and I'm going to share my screen, if that hopefully will work. Does that look relatively normal?
Yes, well, it's working anyway.
Very good. We like that. We like that. Okay, so look, some of you may have heard me speak before. Last year, I did a couple of talks on pioneering the US market and obviously gaining traction there. I suppose things have changed quite dramatically in the last year in the US in terms of the way to approach the business there for a host of reasons. And I'd love to touch on that with the presentation. So just to give you a quick overview of how I'm going to proceed with it, you may have heard me say before, you know, the way to look at this is from the production of a piece in Ireland right through to the US consumer making that purchase. Now, COVID undoubtedly has introduced a new way of approaching buyers. All those traditional routes that we would have taken, whether it would be American buyers coming to Ireland to showcase or just visiting the country, or alternatively us traveling to the US. Obviously, a lot of that is on hold at the moment. Having said that, there are loads of other options. As all of you will know, buyers' current consumer selling channels is now screens as well as footfall. But really, screens has taken a huge part in that buying process for what will be your customers. As ever, it's still very important that you have a digital brochure and you have your landed dollar price. They're two key issues, and I can answer any questions on those offline if you wanted to email Emer. I suppose what I wanted to touch on today is a couple of alternative ways to ensure buyer comfort, and that is via strong social media presentation, reassuring logistics pathway. It's amazing. Traditionally, you know, you'd have packed all that gear up, you'd have gone to a trade show, you'd have gone to meet buyers on the road. Now, with current access to data, you can win or lose a buyer in 5 minutes, literally. And the way that process happens is via our screens. So more important than ever is that process of ensuring that your digital footprint is up to scratch. So with that in mind, I just wanted to reassure, it's funny, Emer said to me during the week, listen, Marcus, you know, give the Irish companies a reason to go to the US. And I think whilst, you know, you don't want to be over optimistic, what you do have to remember, there's 330 million people over there. It's a massive market, and whether you're in a boom time or whether you're in a recession time, there is still unbelievable purchasing power from the Americans. And I suppose it makes it a little bit easier if there is a surge and there is a veer towards a boom. at the moment, that area of encouragement is via online optimism, and that's what I refer to it as. So COVID buying practices have accelerated for absolute sure. Whilst there has been a fall off in brick and mortar, the surge in online has maintained and exceeded pre-COVID sales for the multiples and independents. So when I say multiples, that means chains of stores. Probably one that you all know is Bloomingdale's. I just took their numbers. So their digital sales for 2019 versus 2020 was up 27%. And it now accounts for 38% of their annual revenue, which is really quite incredible. And that's the area. So when a buyer has that mindset, it's not necessarily, oh, I must buy that. How's it going to look on the shop floor? How's it going to look, you know, in my stores? They are still thinking that, but they're much more thinking, how is this company able to provide me with their digital footprint on my site? And that, you've got to get into that mindset. So preparation for buyers' needs in that area is really, really vital. Where previously, as I say, you'd have done your show, you'd have done your digital brochure, your price list. That was almost enough because we've all got fantastic products that are made in Ireland. But now it's a different set of parameters in order to appease the buyer. Just to touch on something I've spoken about before is the mainstream market. You've got your independents and your multiples. It's not rocket science. It's very like the Irish market. You've got a whole bunch of independents around the country, and then you've got a whole bunch of multiples. There's just a lot more of them. I think when you're approaching them, now you need video presentations if you have a budget for that. You need that of your products and your story and yourself. They love a person involved and how it's made. And whilst good photography can highlight that, I think now we all know through all the social media channels that a short snap of video really helps give a good reflection of your company. Obviously, it takes sample packs. Obviously, it takes Zoom and team calls. Who to chase after in terms of sales? I suppose this is very specific to current times, like the current COVID buying practices. Historically, I would have done kind of Google drive-bys and looked at a storefront and seen what they look like and the town that they're in and is it worth traveling there or what are they like? Now I check their website, I research their delivery lead times, I research their COVID policies for in-store. A lot of stores in the US are doing a click and collect policies. They love it. They love a bit of driving, them Americans. So they have a very strong click and collect service at the moment. Stores are also offering phone and online personal shopping. So stores with these services are thriving. So they're the ones to chase after because you know that they have been flexible in adhering to the circumstances of COVID. Now that's not to say there might be a traditional brick and mortar in a pretty seaside village, which would be fantastic if there is a domestic tourist season in the US, which there will be. I'm not suggesting don't chase after those, but the ones that are really, really thriving at the moment are the ones that have these behavior policies going on at the moment. I suppose in presentation of product, just ensure you have your Zoom prepared. As I say, your digital screen face needs to be the same as your trade show face. You've got to be on form. You've got to be engaging on it. Just make sure you're in a good mood. I had a cup of coffee just before this, so I'm nicely buzzed up. It's the other thing is, don't show the whole product range. Show maybe 1 or 2, 3 products. Have them available nearby you in case your buyer wants to see something that they may have seen online. But I wouldn't get into a whole showcase of everything. I would just show a couple of products to them. Really important is have a sample pack ready so that when the buyer says, look, I'd love to see some of your products, then you just need, you need to ship that out the next day and send them the tracking number. Really important, because it's so impressing them that you can do that within a day or two, and do it express. I know it's an extra few quid. Don't send it, you know, by mail. You want to have it, signed for. Make sure that there's a signature release, that they have to sign for it, if you know what I mean. Don't do signature release, non-signature release. So very important that that sample pack, because that's their actual first engagement of your logistics, and it'll reassure them if they get a package from Ireland straight to them. By the way, if it's a multiples buyer, one of the bigger stores, just ensure you have their home address. I don't ask them, can I have your home address? It's a little bit eerie. I just say, what's the best address to deliver the samples to you? Because the bigger buyers are not in their corporate offices. They're all working from home like the rest of us. So the consumer reassurance leads to buyer reassurance. So whilst consumers will buy from their local online supplier in the US, that consumer in New York or Dallas or the upper Midwest, wherever it is, they are going to see your product on this customer site. Then they're going to go to your site, and then they're going to check your social footprint. So really important that you have all this digital footprint in place. It's important to have really strong professional product shots and lifestyles available for your retail partners that are consistent with your own digital presentations. So you know, I don't know about you, but when I go and buy something on a third-party website, I check the manufacturer itself for validity, for what they're like. So again, it's this 5-minute process. It can be even shorter. It's like, okay, the manufacturer is fine. They've got a really nice site. The photos are consistent. The tone of language is consistent. That's why it's also really important to have consistent copy. The product data information has to be readily available. So you need that spreadsheet with your codes, your descriptions, your barcoding, if you have that available. Shoot that off to the buyers straight away. They find that very reassuring. Do you want my product data sheets? Which also has, you know, a couple of the companies I represent, we have a Dropbox link in the product data sheet so that they can just click on it and then they have access to the image for their own site. As I mentioned before, it's important to have a video presentation of the products and yourselves, the makers. Really, you know, even if it's 90 seconds, 2 minutes, I think it just gives a great representation of what you're making, who you are, and how your business runs. And I know that you need a little bit of budget for it, but hey, you're not going to trade shows in the States, you're not exhibiting here, there, and everywhere, and there's no travel time. So it's another way of reflecting yourself. The other one I've been doing quite a lot recently is you offer Zoom trainings for staff, whether they're on the floor in the brick and mortar locations, if they happen to be one of the regions in the US that's open, or even some of the other guys, some of the phone staff who are talking to customers. You know, have a Zoom with them and they can ask you questions. It's only 20 minutes of time, but they love that reassurance. So I suppose that's it in a snapshot. I know there's probably quite a lot of questions coming out of that, but I think if you've got those core items set up and readily available to you, then, you know, you're ready to do business in the US, and you're ready to go chasing after those leads. And if you have any questions on any of it, just shoot them off to Emer and we'll come back to you.
Marcus, thank you very much. The questions are coming in, and what we'll do is we'll deal with them all at the end, because I think we'll get a conversation going. So Florence, I'd like to welcome you, and just in your own time, if you want to unmute yourself there and share screen. And we'll see how this side of the Atlantic is doing.
Right. Everybody can see. Welcome everybody. My name is Florence Magee, and I'll be looking at the European and UK markets. There you go. So just quickly about myself, because it's my first time doing a webinar for the Craft Council. As you can hear, I'm not Irish, I'm French. But I've been living in Ireland since '98. I describe myself as a true European. Europe is the story of my life. I've lived more outside of France than I've lived in France at that stage. And of the city that I've lived in, there's Marseille, Dublin, Paris, London, and Amsterdam with various lengths, but I stayed a long time in London as well. I have an MBA in Creative Industries Management and generally a background in business management, but I also escaped Cubicle Nation in 2002, and among other things, I trained as a hand weaver and I had a hand weaving studio in Dublin. So you can see me in the picture in a retail fair in the south of France trying to peddle my wares. Okay, so first thing, I'm going to look at really just the markets. The EU and UK market, and now we have to take them separately, are very varied, obviously, both geography and language. But we're going to try and quickly get to the interesting bits in terms of homeware, then looking at trends for this year, and then how to access both markets for retail, direct selling, and then for retail. And as I said, how to get there, the trades and everything. Okay, so looking at the general European market, as I said, it's very varied in culture, in language. Europeans feel very Europeans, but have very separate lives, let's say. And Irish people have a tendency to take their vacations in Ireland, so would have be more understanding of the European market. Before I forget, I'm just going to put it out there that it is important to reassure your buyers that Ireland is within the EU. And it sounds a bit, silly, because of course we are so, attached to the EU in Ireland, but there is still a bit of uncertainty as to the north of Ireland, the UK, and it's just to avoid any reasons to say no, just reassuring you are made in Europe, you deal in euros, you are part of the European Union. Brexit, UK is separate. So yeah, I have a slide here on the disposable income of European. We tend to see Ireland has a large GDP, so gross national product. But when we look at the disposable income, because the cost of living is so high in Ireland, we, in a way, reassuringly see that most of Western Europe has more basically money in their pocket at the end of the month than Ireland does. So I thought that a piece of good news. Obviously, that's a few years old now, but it's something to keep in mind. There you go. And this graph looks at the spend on household furnishing. So home furnishing, carpets, everything. Again, it's before the pandemic, but it's to give you an idea of scale between what is spent in Ireland to what is spent in Europe. And as you can see, most countries in at least Western Europe spend more on their homes than Ireland do. This is a kind of per capita, so I wouldn't get too attached about the figure itself, but you can see that by order of proportion, Germans and Austrians spend twice as much as the Irish on their homes. And that's a pretty good news as well. We'll talk about the trends and the post-COVID spend afterwards. And final little tidbit on the European market is looking at the online spend. Obviously, Ireland is an island and we're quite digitally, we take things up very fast in Ireland. So we're quite high up. So we're the third here in terms of online spend per capita after the UK, which is the European leader, or European and UK leader, whatever, and of course below the States. But interestingly, Irish people tend to shop from abroad quite a lot, and a lot more than, let's say, the Nordics, who have a high spend per capita online, but only purchase within the Nordics. Okay. And finally, I touched on it very quickly, but there is the whole issue of Brexit. This is not a Brexit webinar. I'm not going to touch on it after this slide, but it will be in everybody's mind if you come from Ireland. So do reassure them. Be clear as well for yourself who's in the Eurozone, who isn't, because that's going to, impact on currency exchange, and what are the added costs to exporting in Europe and in the UK, particularly with the introduction of the VAT and the customs charges. So I know there's a webinar on that. I'll just leave it. Another thing to be aware of is the EU Packaging Directive, for example, which is quite new, it's a couple of years old. For example, it means that in Germany, if you send, let's say, a cushion to Germany, you are responsible for the recycling of the packaging that cushion came in. And so there's companies that you can subscribe to who for a fee will take care of that for you, but you need to be aware of what those new regulations mean in terms of accessing the market. And for that, each country has a separate way of introducing the regulations. And then the payment terms and the payment methods would vary depending on the country. Like in Germany, you'd be expected to pay in advance or get the money in advance. Your Italian clients might be a lot longer in paying because of the payment terms. And when it comes to direct spend, the use of PayPal is pretty much everywhere, but very, very specific purchasing just methods online per country. And then, of course, that your insurance covers you abroad and that you talked about who pays for insurance and shipping with the buyer. Okay, let's look at a bit of color. We're going to look at the trends. So I know it's been a really hard few months for everybody. And, we've all been in the same boat. But 2021 is going to be bright. Pantone says that. It's interesting to know that we have been very locked down in Ireland, no pun intended. Things are very different in different countries of Europe. Sweden has hardly been locked down. Spain has had like a military style lockdown at the start. So the experience of COVID is very different. But one thing for sure is that we've all spent more time than ever at home. So comfort, self-care, and a general interest in making the most of the home environment is definitely there. I'm broadcasting from my bedroom. I never thought I would work from my bedroom. That's where we are, all of us. So the importance of interior cannot be understated in this day and age. It's actually a really booming environment because people are tired of their houses. They want to spend on it and they want things that make them feel comfortable and they want to take care of themselves. Wellness is a huge trend. So how you include that in your offer and how you tag on it is maybe just something to think about. Natural materials, textures, just something really to bring comfort is important. I have your use of multi-spaces. As I said, we all work from home, exercise from home, so the home has to work a lot harder. But also we see the need to bring in personality, the personal touch, and to curate the home as something that we are happy to share with strangers, but also that shows our personality. And that's when maybe when we think about homeware, these standout pieces can come into play. It's the home as a gallery, and actually a lot of interior designers are doing their show within the home of people. That's why it comes up. Pets and plants was a huge trend already a couple of years ago, but it's increased. We all need the little bit of endorphin we procure. Then sustainability is massive on the agenda for everybody from the consumer. And I would say more in mainland Europe than it is in Ireland, maybe in the UK. French, Dutch, German, Belgian consumers would be very, very strict on what type of things they buy or don't buy on environmental grounds. So how you can reassure people and how you can show your story and show what your materials are is important. A lot of businesses on on websites in these countries have a tag on sustainability. What are they doing for sustainability? That leads into what I call conscious consumption, the opposite to flashy consumption. It's about walking with, buying with your, changing the world with your buys, basically choosing what you buy for the good that it creates in the world. And I find that designer makers and people who are really engaged in materiality are exceptionally well placed to actually answer a lot of those trends. And particularly when the last trend is joy, bringing the joy. We're all tired of being at home. We're all a bit down. We need something that brings us energy. So how you do that and how your products can bring energy is very important. Okay, very quickly on retail trends, because Marcus touched on that already. As I said, compared to the US, the EU is a very heterogeneous place, different languages, different countries, different histories, wars, but everybody has gone back to buying French, buying Spanish, buying British. There is, I would say, for want of a better word, a nationalist trend of this ultra-localism, like supporting local producers, supporting local makers. Obviously, that doesn't really help you when you're trying to export, but you need to show that you're part of that big family of European makers. And if I may say, saying it is one thing, showing it will really bring you across the frontiers, because a picture is worth 1,000 words, and everybody loves video content that you can share. And everybody loves the Irish. As I said, transparency, the values of how you do business is very important for retailers, and they need to be able to show that through their products or how you support them doing that. There's a lot of value-led buying, and it's one of the big trends. Social enterprise, like what are you achieving in the world by buying this thing? So it's very big questions, but very important. Then, as Marcus highlighted, of course, it's online everything. It's the explosion of online. It's already was on the cusp, but now it's become the norm. So how you engage with that, and how you support your buyers engaging with it, but also how you capture it for yourself and enable people to buy directly from your website easily through, all these social media. You can use Instagram as a shop now. Facebook shops are a bit old now, but I think you can buy from Pinterest as well. So just using all these eyeballs to actually transform into sales. Everybody, all your retailers, or most of them, would be online. So you need to create content for them, and you don't need to create separate content, but being able to show video is very important in social media, and being able to show that you share the story. And then finally, in the retail trend is the revenge, I would say, of brick and mortar, because it's actually working with online at the moment. Obviously, a lot of things is closed, but brick and mortar becomes a place where the experience of the brand, of the shop, happens. And I have a picture of the Galerie Lafayette, because they started that's a couple of years old. But again, it's a trend. COVID has accelerated trends, not created them. The sellers in the Galerie Lafayette are chosen for their personal style. They're given an individual Instagram account where they show their style, and they welcome the consumers, passers-by, to show them how to dress like them in an environment where the clothes are not separated by brands anymore. So it's really this added value. Anyway, that was our trends. Sorry. We're going to look at how to get to the European market. And I want to touch on selling directly to the consumer, because it is something that, that happens quite a lot with European markets through personal contacts or just people finding you. And just looking at groups of makers in London, they tend to sell more directly to private customers than to retail, to trade. The online selling market is not for everybody. It's probably at the lower end of the price range. And it very much depends on who your client is. So we haven't looked at the whole strategy and finding the right place for you. Just to say, if you're going to sell directly on a marketplace, it's gone to the Americans, it's Amazon, eBay, and Etsy now. But social sales on social media are increasing. If Europeans were lagging a little bit on social media before, then not anymore. Everybody's obsessed with Instagram in a way that it was a lot more niche a few years ago. So there are opportunities there. There's retail fairs, which is selling directly to the consumer. Again, it depends what your business is. You might be creating expensive, unique objects. You might have limited series. You might have a small scale production. So it really very much depends on who you're trying to approach. But this is like a list of retail fairs that are actually taking place this year, surprisingly. Except for Collect, it just happened online, but all the rest is billed as happening in real life, IRL, this year, from the very unique object or artisan d'art, artistic craft at the top, to the more, let's say, consumer goods or lower price products at the end. Again, that's just a sample. I'm not going to stop too much on that. I'm going to keep going. How are we doing for time? We're good, yeah. So finally, selling to trades. Obviously, each country has their large retailers. That's El Corte Inglés, which is the Spanish large retailer. You know, the Galeries Lafayette in France. There's all different large retailers. A lot of them have been having issues and have had to consolidate in the past few years. Post-COVID, it's going to be interesting. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, just simply because the potential of selling directly to a large retailer in Europe straight off the bat, if you don't have any presence in the country, would be quite low. So I'm going to focus on more the independent retailers, which is a very buoyant sector. And the variety of stores that you can encounter is absolutely fabulous. It goes from interior stores or to concept stores that makes fashion and homeware and just anything else. But also florists are incredibly popular and fashionable and really branch out into homeware and lifestyle. Kids stores and homeware associated with that aesthetic are doing really well, but I can see opportunities in like restaurants and tea shops who have a product range as well. Anyway, these are a few, but the independent retailers, they've all been stuck at home. They've had to pivot to an online presence. Most of them have an online shop as well as a brick and mortar shop. They would be very digitally active and they're always looking for people. So they might not have the money to go to the trade fairs in the first place, and they might be already doing most of their shopping online on social media. So as Marcus said, your social profile is increasingly important. And how you support these people choosing you is very important. It's not only about the product, it's about who you are, what you represent as a company, and how you support that online. You can offering videos, offering even studio visits would be very important. And then there are retailers who have no brick and mortar at all. That's a selection from Northern, which is Scandis, but include Irish Goods, Wolf and Badger in the UK, the Future Kept, which would be more artisan, like well-made home goods in the UK. The Little Squiggle is a brilliant concept store in Vienna called Volta. I'm very interested. Manufactum is handmade goods for the home in Germany. It's quite a large. And Maison Godillot would be like an edited homeware shop online. There's plenty of them, basically. And then finally, you might look at export, not to export exactly what you produce for the Irish market. You might find that you're exporting part of your products because maybe of margins or because of the interest of the market, but you might be exporting your services. There's a lot of what's called editing houses in Europe and the UK, where they take designers to actually create products that are made actually by more manufactured ways after that. There's also potentially collaborations with, let's say, restaurants or hotels, yoga centers on limited series, could be even a high net worth individual who wants something specific for their second home or whatever. And so it's just branching out from the usual offer that you may have. And then there's a potential for site-specific work. I like the example of Starlimi Man because she's a hand weaver, which is generally quite limited in terms of reach, but she's branched out into interior in a way that she did a collaboration with a tile factory and created a color, a series of colorful tiles, and then site-specific work as well for hospitals. So it's just ideas of how things might work. Okay, now we're on to the final stretch on how do you get there. My personal way would be to start your list. Start your list, start training people on social media, on your Instagram, liking them, seeing what they like, and seeing how you fit, not by having exactly the same product, but having a product that matches their aesthetic and maybe is something that they don't have already. And start your list. You need 50, 100 stores on your list before you start approaching them. You know, it's not a question of approaching one store and then they say no and then you just stop doing it. Also thinking that you might want to look at one country, or you might want to think that you want similar cities in a variety of countries. So maybe you want the fashion capital of several countries. You want Milan, Paris, and Barcelona, and that's it. You know, it doesn't have to be I'm taking over France. It can be a bit more nuanced than that. These are ideas of where to find them. They're pretty self-explanatory, but for those who don't know Truva, it's a great website that offers independent brick and mortar shops an online store. So basically it's great to make a list of who has interesting stores and they're now in 13 countries. So it's quite interesting. Then you might be surprised to find it only now, but the trade fairs, it's a funny year for the trade fairs. It's been a funny time for the trade fairs in general because information is so much more readily accessible because we're able to talk to each other like this. So what do trade fairs offer? And they offer networking, they offer information, they offer that little experiential plus. I'm going to go to a list in a minute, but just to say trade fairs are a brilliant way to research what's happening, what are the trends, who's selling, what price points. You can do your research. And now they're almost all entirely online. So Maison and Objet, Top Drawer, IMM, everything is online until August. I think Formex is billed as being an in real life event, and everything else after that is billed as happening live. But it's been great for me, I must say, to be able to just snoop around and go to the talks without having to actually physically go to any of the fairs. And I don't think that's going to go away. that will continue. For those who are interested in the trade fair calendar for Europe, I have a PDF that Emer can share afterwards, just to tell you what's happening when. My own tack, because fairs are so expensive, is to really know why you're doing it. It's not a question of spending the money and not having to think. Trade fairs are great for meeting buyers, agents, distributors, but also industry professionals, but they're expensive. You need to know what you want out of them. Okay, that's my final slide. It's just a reminder to develop your network. And you're Irish, you have a great sense of networking. It's literally in the DNA. I'm forever amazed at it. Start developing those little feelers. Know who's doing what in terms of interior design, or even if your environment is more the gallery environment or unique objects. Find out where you fit and start following those people, those professional prescribers, interior designers, the stylists, the architects, whoever is speaking in your little corner of the world. The influencers are obviously on the increase, but I prefer looking at it in terms of cultivating fans rather than just going for the big names. Influencers don't really, I think, match the ethos of the designer maker, and I don't know, it needs to be consistent with your brand and what needs to be both ways. And the journalist, using your suppliers. Maybe you have interesting suppliers in Europe, and you might want to do a collaboration with them. I know somebody who got into the Milan Design Week because she did a large scale, it was lampshades for her paper supplier in city center Milan. They got onto the Design Week. So it's just thinking outside of the box as well, and how you can create your influence there. Then finally, don't forget the Irish diaspora. There are hundreds of thousands of Irish people living and working in Europe. This person there, it's from the Wild Geese section of the Irish Times. He has about 6 restaurants in Luxembourg. Maybe he needs special products, I don't know, but there is a wealth of, not that everybody's going to open your door because they're Irish and you're Irish, but there is a network there that can be activated if it's done well, if it matches what you're trying to do. That's all for me. That was a whistle-stop tour on how to make it zero.
Thank you so much. That was a really terrific introduction. And Marcus, likewise, it's an absolute pleasure to have two of you here today. I'm just going to reiterate my email. If anyone would like a product analysis session afterwards, Marcus and Florence will be involved in that, and then I'm going to seek out other specialists for you if you want to look at different markets. So there are a few questions coming in, and let's have a look at those. Marcus, do you want one for the US market?
Sure. Okay.
We've a product that would be perfect for the US market, but selling in the US would mean extra costs. Can we sell at a higher price in the US, or what would you suggest?
It's a great question, and it comes up all the time. You have to, with access, obviously, to pricing information around the world via the web, you have to reconcile your international price lists. So your online price that you're selling for in Ireland has got to correlate with the US. Now, obviously, there's an exchange rate involved. There are duties and costs. So there is a small bit of flexibility, but you've got to price it so that it's the same amount. And again, I do it quite regularly at a wholesale level and at a retail level. So for example, if you go to your site and you've got a product that's €100 in Ireland online, the current exchange rate is about 1.22. So you multiply it up, there's obviously duties involved there. People their understanding of it Now, if you have a product in Ireland that's €100 and you want to sell it in America for $180 or whatever, it doesn't correlate. So you've got to make them talk to each other, and you've got to make them reconcile. As I say, there is an understanding, and if you wanted to do it offline, I'd be very happy to run through a wholesale retail reconciliation pricing structure, which includes duties, shipping, and exchange rates. It's a very easy Excel formula. Now, the one thing I would say is I'll help you with that list, but I ain't an accountant. So just run it by your numbers person before you hear some sales guy on a webinar telling you how to run your business financially. So just I can certainly give you the template I use, and it's pretty good. But just always run it by your bookkeeper or your accountant.
That's great, Marcus. Really good. What someone would like here is more information about the editing houses.
Yeah, so the editing houses, I mentioned that on my presentation, and it's something that I've noticed. We have the persona of the designer maker in Ireland, which we share with the UK. It is a bit less obvious in mainland Europe, and there is a much bigger presence of the design sector, and the design as a designer, not a maker. There are, I know mostly the French ones, I can give you a few names, editing houses where basically they bring in a designer. So let's say a lamp, here's somebody, a lamp, a piece of furniture or whatever. They bring in the design. They do not engage with the making of the product. It's something that is done by manufacturing in Europe, probably within strict terms, but the association is this person as the designer presents. There's even a site in the UK that's called Faberin, that is a kind of a print-on-demand furniture website, very interesting, where you present your designs and they take care of the manufacturing, and your design is there to be chosen. And if somebody chooses it, you get royalties on your design. And they take care of the manufacturing part. So it's dissociating this, making, designing and making. Just to look at it, there's Superette, there's Édition sous étiquette. Just edit, if you type in editing houses, there's quite a few.
Okay. I have a note. Is it Donny, have I pronounced that properly, show not happening this year? Yeah.
Well, no, for the later part of the September edition is built to happen in real life on their website anyway. Maybe there's been changes, but I checked last night and there were, I don't know.
And you're finding a trend, are you, that towards the end of the year there's more positivity? I find that pre-September it's all online, and there seems to be a bit more positivity after that.
That's exactly it. It's come past the summer, everybody seems to be sure that it's going to be in real life. So they might be wrong. They probably have the template for an online fair already because of the previous editions from last year or earlier in the year. But everybody is bidding for in real life after the summer. So that's reassuring.
Yeah, okay. And Marcus, if you want to promote your work to US stores, and would you be using the images from the maker's own websites, or should we get special ones done up, or what do you think on that basis?
Absolutely use your own, because what you want is consistency. You want, even though you're using your imagery is going to be on another platform, at least that will give the consumer reassurance when they circle back and check your own site. Once that product shot is the same, 100%. I would share that, and that'll also, you know, that gives the buyer reassurance that you're sharing what you use on your own site. So definitely, there's no need for two sets of images.
And you're getting continuity of story and quality and everything as well, I suppose.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'd even, I mean, you know, get them to use some of the copy that you use. Now, you can't dictate what your customers, you know, writes about it, and some sites in the US and some sites around the world have a particular tone of language that they adhere to for all products. But I find that if you provide the copy to them, they're only too delighted to use it, which again gives the consumer consistency.
Okay, that's terrific. Listen, I just remind everybody, I'm getting a number of people who'd like product analysis sessions, and I think that's going to be a brilliant opportunity. So remember that that's there. And if we didn't cover anything today that you'd like to do in greater detail, cover in greater detail, it'll happen at those sessions. So I'd just like to thank our audience for today, and I'd really like to thank Florence and Marcus for giving their insight. And as I said, if there's anything that wasn't covered, we will cover it in individual sessions. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye-bye.